Hello everyone, this time I will introduce the IP address table and the service table in the object. How should we proceed them combining them in the settings? And these are the purpose of the IP address. It is applicable to restrict source and destination IPs in security policy. And you can create an IP address table. It can help you easily identify the type of device in the various records. If you need to bind IP and MAC, it should be done in the IP address table. It supports both IPv4 and IPv6, and you can change them by this button. Then I will introduce the IP address configuration. Just click on drop-down menu to expand the following functions, such as IP address, and IP and MAC address, and MAC address, and IP mask, IP range, user-defined domain, default domain blacklist, list of external URL. Later, I will introduce the method for setting up the IP address table. However, some settings that are more intuitive and simple will not be explained. I will only introduce IP and MAC address, user-defined domain, and a list of external URL. These are the parts where customers more frequently encounter configuration issues in the IP address table. The first is IP and MAC address. You can bind IP and MAC here if 1.100 is online. You can type in 1.100 here and click Get MAC. It will fill in the MAC address automatically. You can also type in MAC address by yourself. After binding IP and MAC, you can start setting up a rule to allow only this IP and MAC to access the internet, and add a rule to block any source and block any destination and ports, so that only certain IP and MAC address can access the internet. Selecting DHCP means that when the interface has DHCP service enabled and assigned IP address, if this MAC address requests a DHCP IP address, it will always be assigned the IP address 1.100 to it. Next is the user-defined domain setting. You can enter various domains. In this field, the blue question mark icon will show a tip with the format. After the settings are complete, when there is a need to connect to this domain and the query packets pass through NU will also record the resolved IP address. Afterwards, you can see the resolved IP address automatically listed here. Typically, we set up a domain in scenarios for example, I want to block user from accessing ChatGPT. However, since it has many IP addresses, it's impractical to add them one by one. So what should I do? In this case, I can set ChatGPT as a domain list and create a deny rule. By applying this rule to the ChatGPT domain list, I can block user from accessing ChatGPT. This is more common use of the domain list. List of external URL. This feature is convenient for administrator to manage IP list. Administrator can organize IP list through the program. It is benefit for updating and obtain the latest IP addresses, especially used for IPs that frequently change. If you use this feature, administrator no longer need to manually add or remove IP on NU. It can eliminate many management steps. So you can fill in link here. And if you click the question mark icon, it will show format tips. If your HTTP file sharing data requires authentication, you can select this option to support it. Next is the service table. These are the service table's purpose. It is used in the rule to restrict the settings of source or destination ports. It provides a basic service table, and you can also customize the service table. The service table can be set for a single port or a range port, such as setting from port 10,000 to port 20,000. It can simplify the configuration of control rules. For example, if you want to allow the use of 5 different ports, you can first set these 5 ports as a service group. This way you only need to configure one rule to allow this service group, which will meet your requirements. How do we set up a service group? You can find a function from it, and you can click Add to create a service table. On the left, you can choose a protocol, and on the right, you can set a single port or a range port. If you need to configure many ports and the current settings are not enough, you can click More to explain the service table settings. Here are the steps to configure the IP address table and the service table in combination with the rule. These are the steps to configure the rule. The method for setting up rule was introduced earlier, and if you're not very familiar with these steps, you can refer to the previous video content about control rules. The first 4 steps fall within the scope of basic setting for control rules. The 5th step is control items. The 6th step is firewall protection. The 5th and the 6th step can be decided by administrator whether to apply them. However, in following operation demonstration, we will not perform the 5th step and the 6th step. The IP address table and the service table are related to the 3rd step. We need to first go object to define the IP address table and the service table, and then apply them when setting the rules. So this is demonstration. I will demonstration how to combine the IP address table and the service table in a rule. So I have the status. I have one name is 1.0/24, and when one is 186.87. And I have two requirements. The first one is IP range 1.1 to 1.200, only allow web browsing. The second one is IP outside the range 1.1 to 1.200, allow any ports and any IP. And you have to note the rule to avoid accidentally allowing other IPs or ports that should not be allowed. For the first requirement, in the range 1.1 to 1.200, only allow web browsing. You can see the range is 1 to 200. So I can set this range as the IP address group and only allow web browsing. So I can set the ports to a service group. Then in the third step, I will apply the IP address group and the service group settings like this. I will define IP address, IP range, and the service group. This. So I can apply IP address and the service group in the rule, and the action is permit. So the first requirement step up will look like this. The rule step use the first to fourth steps. We add the IP address table and the service table in the third step. When you hover the mouse pointer over it, you can see the tip displaying the settings. Next is the second requirement. IP outside the range 1.1 to 1.200. Allow any port and IP. There are at least two different ways to configure this. The first method is allow any to any. The second method is allow only IPs from 201 to 254. Why is this range? You can see these requirements. It also means allow from 1.201 to 1.254. So I set like this. If you use the first method for configuration, you need to be aware that this rule configuration overlaps with the IPs in the first requirement. At this point, you need to check whether the second requirement configuration conflicts with the first requirement. The second method does not overlap with the IPs in the first requirement because it restricts the source. Therefore, for the second requirement, if we use the first method for configuration, the rule will look like this after completion. The configuration steps involve steps 1 to 4. The blue frame indicates the additional rule for denial, while I'll set a blue frame rule. Because the first requirements allow any to any, for the first requirements, only IPs from 1 to 200 are allowed to use specific port, and all others should be denied. So we need to insert a full frame rule in the middle that denies all IP and ports from 1 to 200 to avoid conflicts between the rule settings. If the second requirement uses in the second method, the configuration will look like this. They don't conflict each other because the source range are not include each other. And this is the note to avoid accidentally allowing other IPs or ports that should not be allowed. As mentioned earlier, the configuration of the second requirements may result in different outcomes depending on the method used. To prevent allow other IPs, sometimes additional rules need to be added to avoid this. Regarding the rule here, we have insert a rejection settings in the second rule to avoid this situation. So I will only allow 1.200 to do the web browsing. So other ports, other service they cannot use. So I need to block them. So this is you need to pay attention. So here is the explanation regarding the rule for combining the IP address table and the service table. Thank you.